the recruitment issues that the U.S. military is facing. Now, this issue, again, has been going on for quite some time. So this is not, something that's just occurring here in 2023. There's been reports going back as early as, 2014 and even before that, where there has been challenges with recruiting people to serve in the armed forces.
The point that there's limited news
I just want
coverage.
to know what your viewpoint
Partly
is.
due because major news organizations have been told on, what they can report on.
The People's Voice. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is The People's Voice. I am Trey Evans and I am The People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we say thank you to everyone who has taken some time out to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be doing something else with your time, and so we appreciate you spending your time equity with us. As always, if this information that we provide is valuable and you find it to be enlightening and informative, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll be notified when we put out a new episode. We put out new episodes each and every Friday, which can be heard on all podcast platforms. And we also put out a video weekly on YouTube of the podcast for those of you who would like to watch the podcast. But as always, we thank you again and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I would like to talk about the United States Armed Forces. And specifically, I want to talk about some of the deficiencies that they have been experiencing with the recruitment process in terms of recruiting new soldiers and people to enlist into the armed forces. And this is, when I say armed forces, this is not just the Army. This is, all branches of the armed forces that would include, the Marines, Navy, the Air Force, things of that nature. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the recruitment shortage that's the U.S. Armed Forces or the U.S. military is experiencing. And I want to talk about it for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's been some reporting on it, but, obviously it's not one of those stories that's trending on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, or on social media. And it's really not one of those conversations that's in the mainstream, if you will. Now, don't get me wrong, there has been some reporting about it, but there hasn't been, in my opinion, enough light shined on this topic. So I want to talk about that today. And then I want to talk about, some of the methods that are being used to address the issue. Also, obviously, want to talk about why there is a shortage, but definitely want to talk about an interesting aspect that I think many people will be interested to hear regarding how the shortage is being addressed. So that's what we'll talk about today. We'll talk about the recruitment issues that the U.S. military is facing. Now, this issue, again, has been going on for quite some time. So this is not, something that's just occurring here in 2023. There's been reports going back as early as, 2014 and even before that, where there has been challenges with recruiting people to serve in the armed forces. And, one of those reasons is that, I've said this before on previous podcasts. The United States, especially the United States government and its armed forces, it's a business. they operate just like any other business. And just like any other business, in order for them to succeed, they need to have a labor force, right? Because they have objectives and goals that they need to meet, KPIs and key performance indicators for those who may not know what that acronym is. But they have goals and objectives that they need to meet. And in order to do that, you're going to have a labor force. And one of the challenges that the United States Armed Forces, the military, is having is that they are competing against companies for labor. And, that's one of the reasons that the shortage is continuing and being magnified even more, because obviously you have companies who are looking for talent to fill slots that in past years would be heavily leaning towards joining the military. That was one of the, that's one of the pipelines that they use. So let me kind of talk about a little bit, some numbers. So just like any business, like I said, each business has a fiscal year. And so I'm reading an article here from pbs.org, and they did a story on this back actually earlier this month. And one of the reasons that they highlighted this is because the Army's fiscal year just ended. And in that in this story, they talked about the shortfall that the Army has experienced. And so basically the Army had a goal of, their goal was to reach about 65,000 new enlisted people or new recruits to come into the Army this year. And they fell short of that number by 15,000. So they only had, they were supposed to have 65,000 recruits this year, and they only ended up with 50,000 recruits this year because, again, this is an ongoing issue for the United States military. And again, right now I'm just highlighting, what is in the article regarding the Army, but this has been going on in all branches of the United States military, whether it's the Marines, the Air Force, the Navy. People are just not going into the armed forces anymore. So why is this happening, right? Well, there's several factors. One of the first factors or causes of this is that the pipeline or the talent base, if you will, that the Army used to really depend on, 20, 30 years ago, is a lot of it was concentrated on individuals leaving the high schools and then going into the armed services. But what has happened is that resource in terms of pulling or recruiting individuals coming out of high school to have them go into the armed forces is really shrinking. And, a lot of the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zs, they are not as willing to sign up to serve in the armed forces. And now you got to remember that, one of the things that many people, and I'll just talk about my generation, I'm Gen X. And so, in our generation, I knew many people that after high school decided to go onto the armed forces, but I don't think it was ever really understood that by signing up for the armed forces, you were basically putting your life on the line to be in the armed forces. And I know, some people might hear that and go like, oh, come on, people do that. But, a lot of times when they would kind of tell you about all the benefits. You'll be able to get, college money, and you'll be able to get GI money or GHI money for a home, and you'll be able to retire in 20 years, and you'll get the pension, you'll get this and benefits and that. Obviously, at 18, 17, 19, whatever the age is, that's a difficult thing to comprehend, that, okay, they're giving me all of these things, but it's really depending on whether or not I will go into war or have to defend this country with my life, that I'll even be able to receive those benefits. And, obviously we've heard, all of the stories about veterans coming back home with different disabilities and things of that nature, but I'm getting off track. But one of the reasons that the pool and the recruiting is becoming so tough is that, young people out of high school are just not willing to sign up for the armed forces as willingly or as many generations did before, because that was one of the three options. If you had three options that, you had to take after high school, right? It was either get a job, go to college, or go into the armed forces. The second reason why this is occurring is that many high school students, especially students from impoverished neighborhoods, are choosing to go to college rather than go into the armed forces. And college has now become, in many sense, the primary choice for young people in terms of them starting their lives and going on to, become independent. They're utilizing the college route as opposed to going into the armed forces. And then, the last reason, if you will, is that there used to be, obviously there is no longer a draft, right? At one point, there used to be a draft for those of you who are a little bit younger. And, once you turned 18 in the United States, you had to sign up, or you would be drafted into military service, which, a lot of veterans of the Vietnam War were kind of in that, and also World War II. They were in that bucket where they've got recruited into the Army or into the military forces, and that's how they became part of the military. But another reason is there is, not so much, but another pool, if you will, that the armed forces used to utilize is what many have called the poverty draft, right? Because, oftentimes, and even today, many service people that volunteer for military work and armed forces work, I shouldn't say many people, but there are people that volunteer, or not volunteer, but decide to enlist and become a member of the armed United States military or armed services. Oftentimes they come from very impoverished neighborhoods, or not just neighborhoods, but, tough economic circumstances. And the military is a way for them to elevate themselves out of that without having to go to college and obviously take on additional student debt if they can even get that. So that pool as well is dried up quite a bit because, again, many people are choosing after high school, even coming from impoverished neighborhoods and neighborhoods that are impacted economically, they are also choosing to go into college or even trade school for many. So those are kind of the three reasons why you're seeing the shortage, right? And this is a real thing. This is not something that's just, made up for conversation. So how is this being addressed? And that's really the point that I wanted to get to today. So what many people don't know is that to kind of balance that out, another pool, if you will, of recruiting for those recruiters from the armed forces and from military, they're looking more and more towards immigrants, and having immigrants come into the armed forces so they can increase the level of individuals that are enlisting in the armed forces. Now, immigrants going into the United States Armed Forces, this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for literally over 100 years. Matter of fact, let me play this clip from, who is this? This is Sophia Aptekar. She is a sociologist professor at the City University of New York. And she was on a podcast called What Next, which she talked about this. She talked about the history of immigrants being drafted or even being recruited to join the United States military. So let me play that clip first, and then we'll go on from there. But this is quite interesting. Take a listen.
Yeah, sure. Since the Revolutionary War, like the state militias had, people born in Europe who were fighting in them. And throughout U.S. history, immigrants played a very important role as just like military labor. And for example, in the 19th century, you see immigrants recruited in the military using cash bounties. And as many as like half, in some of those conflicts, as many as half of the troops were foreign born.
Wow.
And their recruitment allowed the U.S. to avoid drafts.
And so, as you heard there, again, that was Sophia Aptekar. She's a professor, a sociologist professor. But as you heard her say, immigrants since the Revolutionary War have been recruited, if you will, using a cash bounty then to serve in the United States Armed Forces. So this is not a new phenomenon, but there's been a resurgence of this because, of the shortage of individuals who are signing up for the armed forces here in the United States. Matter of fact, and it kind of goes in a wave, right? So, and I'm just shortening history, not to run through the entire draft, non-draft history, but in 1973, in terms of drafting individuals into the United States Army, that went away. But let's then fast forward to 2008, 2007, somewhere in there. During the Obama years, the administration and that Congress enacted legislation that allowed immigrants not only to join the military because they could join it before, but the incentive to keep the numbers up gave immigrants the opportunity to become naturalized citizens, right? So if you served a year in the armed forces, you then became eligible to become a naturalized citizen. And matter of fact, I'm reading here from the United States Citizen and Immigration Services site, and this is listed on their site. And one of those eligibilities, right at the top, is that you have 1 year of military service. After 1 year, you can become naturalized. Now, and this is during what they consider peaceful times. During times of war, that naturalization process can be moved up exponentially to, a few weeks or a month or so. I'm talking about this because then in 2007, 2008, we had this. During the Trump years, Trump gets into office, and Trump and that Congress decided to make some changes to this. And not to totally eliminate it, but they put a number of roadblocks, if you will, into that process where it was no longer just 1 year and you could become naturalized. There were some other hurdles that you had to go through in order for that to happen, which of course took more time. And and let me just make this clear. When I say immigrants, right, I'm talking about immigrants that have either green cards, they have work visas, student visas, immigrants that are documented. I'm not talking about undocumented immigrants, because I know there's a lot of conversation with the migrants and things of that nature. So I just want to make that clear. We're talking about documented immigrants because there are certain requirements that you have to obviously have to become to even enlist into the United States Army, and even to become a citizen, right? There's certain requirements, writing and speaking English and knowing United States history, things of that nature. But I just want to throw that caveat in there because I know somebody might be thinking, well, they're just no, they're not just, it's not undocumented immigrants. So, but getting back, so they had this naturalization through the military clause, 2007, 2008, somewhere in 2009. Trump and that Congress comes in, they put in these roadblocks. Last October, right, because again, like I told you, these shortages in terms of recruitment has been going on for almost easily a decade or more. It was decided that they would bring back the naturalization through military service clause, if you will. And now you're starting to see another resurgence of immigrants entering the armed forces. Matter of fact, this was addressed recently during a confirmation hearing for who was this for? This is for General Charles Brown. This summer, he was being confirmed for Joint Chief of Staff chair. And during that, Tammy Duckworth, who's a congressperson from Illinois, she put onto the floor that she was going to introduce an act to again address immigrants joining the armed forces. So let me play that, and then I'll close out from there.
Congratulations on your nomination. I really enjoyed our discussion last month. I look forward to continuing to work with you on our military's readiness if you are confirmed. Each of the military services faces challenges in meeting recruiting goals in past due to historically small pool of eligible recruits, and that pool continues to shrink. That's why I'm introducing the Enlist Act to begin to remedy this issue. My legislation enables the Department of Defense to expand its recruiting pool to include longtime residents of this country. This could include many people who love this country and are dedicated to service, like DACA recipients or people who originally came on a work or educational visa and have applied to stay permanently, but can't receive an immigrant visa due to caps in the system. The Enlist Act will aid recruitment efforts by allowing highly skilled and motivated individuals to succeed in the military while still maintaining the department's security requirements and high enlistment standards.
And again, that's Tammy Duckworth from Illinois. But as she said, and as you heard, because of from Illinois, I always say Illinois, from Illinois. But as you heard, the recruitment pool is, again, a challenge in terms of armed forces. So there's been a resurgence of immigrants that are being considered to go into the armed forces. But I wanted to highlight that today because, again, I don't think many people know about that. Now, I think from an opinion standpoint, I'm kind of both sides of it, right? I think it's a great thing, right? Obviously, if there's someone who is an immigrant who decides that they want to serve for the country, and then at the same time they could become natural citizens, I think that's a great thing. Concerns me a little bit also because I cringe that, there are maybe some people who will sign up for this not realizing or maybe not fully comprehending that, yes, you may be able to become a citizen, quicker, like within a year. And I understand, because, those who don't understand the immigration process, to become a naturalized citizen literally takes years, and in some cases a lot of money, because the system is kind of rigged. But we'll save that for another day. But I cringe a little bit in terms of those who may just look at this as an opportunity, their only opportunity to become a citizen, because especially in the world that we live in now, war is literally just around the corner, and I would hate to know that people have lost their lives not understanding the totality of what it means to serve in the armed forces. But it's up for debate, right? Like I said, I'm kind of on both sides of it in terms of the recruitment of immigrants into the United States military. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to kind of get this information out there and kind of get the wheels turning. Obviously, if you'd like to leave a comment, please feel free. You can reach me on any of the social media platforms. You can reach me at I am Trey Evans on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. Whatever social media outlet is out there, I'm on there. So please contact me, leave a comment. Obviously, you guys have been leaving a lot of comments on YouTube. I appreciate it, and I try to answer as many as I possibly can. And then also you can reach us on the People's Voice Podcast. That's on Instagram, the People's Voice Podcast. So that's my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.